This story is titled, "While My Wife Was Out with Her Secret Lover, I Packed Our Children's Things." When she returned smiling from her work dinner, she found empty rooms and a folder of evidence on the table. Hey Reddit, my name is Michael. I'm 35 years old and work as a financial consultant making over $150,000 annually. Until recently, I thought I was living the perfect life in Seattle with my beautiful family. We had a gorgeous house in an upscale neighborhood. I drove a Tesla, and I'd been married to Rachel for 8 years. Together we had 2 wonderful kids, Tyler, 9, and Emma, 7. From the outside, we probably looked like one of those annoyingly perfect Instagram families that everyone secretly resents. But appearances can be deceiving, as I was about to find out in the most painful way possible. It all started on a Tuesday night. I was coming home late after a particularly rough day at work. The moment I stepped inside and the door clicked shut behind me, I had this instant gut feeling that something was wrong. The house was dead silent, which was unusual for that time of evening. Rachel had promised to be home early to put the kids to bed, but there was no sound of her moving around, no children's laughter or the usual noise of our family home. I could smell her new perfume lingering in the air, that expensive Chanel fragrance she had recently started wearing, but never explained why she'd splurged on it. The living room looked untouched, with none of the kids' toys scattered around as they normally would be. No noise, no kids, nothing. The silence was deafening and deeply unsettling. My phone buzzed in my pocket, momentarily startling me. It was a message from Mrs. Anderson, our neighbor from down the street. "Just letting you know the kids are with me," she wrote. "Rachel said you had an emergency at work." I stared at the message in confusion. What emergency? Nobody had called me about anything urgent. I hadn't mentioned any work issues to Rachel. My stomach immediately began doing backflips as the implications started to sink in. I slowly walked upstairs, each step feeling like I was climbing a mountain rather than the familiar staircase of my own home. When I pushed open our bedroom door, the first thing I spotted was Rachel's new black cocktail dress lying discarded on the floor. It reeked of cigarettes and an unfamiliar cologne. Giorgio Armani, maybe? Definitely not mine. My hands instinctively clenched into fists as reality hit me like a sledgehammer. I grabbed the dress and threw it in the garbage can with disgust. If she thought she could waltz back into our home after what she'd obviously been doing, she had another thing coming. With anger fueling my movements, I headed to our walk-in closet and pulled out my old Samsonite luggage. I started packing her things, the designer clothes, the expensive shoes, everything she had bought in recent months. My heart pounded painfully with each item I threw into the bags, but I couldn't stop myself. The betrayal felt too raw, too overwhelming. As I was still frantically packing, I heard her Audi Q7 pulling into the driveway. I didn't stop, just kept shoving everything into bags while listening to the front door open and the distinctive click of her heels on our hardwood floor. Those expensive Jimmy Choos I had bought her for our last anniversary echoed through the quiet house as she made her way inside. "Babe!" she called out, her voice sounding light and carefree, as if nothing in the world was wrong. I paused with a bag half-packed, knowing the moment of truth was rapidly approaching. She had no idea what was waiting for her upstairs. Rachel froze in the doorway when she saw me. Her expensive makeup couldn't hide the shock spreading across her face. Suddenly, her designer dress didn't look so perfect as she realized something was terribly wrong. "Where are the kids?" she asked, her voice already beginning to shake. She didn't even try to explain the obvious situation unfolding before her, which told me everything I needed to know. I stepped closer to her, close enough to smell that new perfume again, the one she'd never worn for me. "They're safe, Rachel. I made sure of that," I replied calmly. I watched fear start clouding her eyes, which was exactly what I wanted to see. She needed to understand the gravity of what she'd done. Her hands started fidgeting nervously with her Gucci purse as she tried to assess the situation. "Why are you packing my things?" she asked, her voice getting sharper. She was trying to regain control of the situation, but control wasn't hers anymore. I had taken it back. I reached into my pocket and pulled out her iPhone 13, the one she had accidentally left behind when rushing out earlier. "I think you know why," I said, showing her the screen where messages from him were clearly visible. These weren't messages she could explain away as being from just friends. Her face went ghost white. Not even her Botox could hide that kind of shock. She didn't even try to deny it, which told me everything I needed to know about her guilt. "Michael, it's not what you think," she started, her words trailing off pathetically. It was such a classic line. I should have seen that coming. Oh, really? Because what I think is pretty clear, I said, my voice rising now. I couldn't help it. The anger I'd been containing was finally boiling over. You think I don't know about your sneaking around? All those fake work meetings? Those pretend girls' nights out? I was almost shouting now. You thought you were so clever, but you're not as smart as you think. Something flashed in her eyes. Anger? Guilt? Maybe both, but it didn't matter anymore. Nothing she could say would undo what she'd done. It was a mistake, okay? Her voice broke as she tried to explain. It was just once. I cut her off immediately, my blood boiling. Once? Don't insult my intelligence, I snapped, pointing to her phone again. I've seen everything. All those late nights. All those lies about working late. I could barely keep my voice steady as I continued. How long has this been going on, Rachel? How long have you been making me look like an idiot? Tears started falling down her face, expensive mascara making black trails down her cheeks. I wasn't buying her act this time. I had seen how happy she looked coming home, high on whatever she had been doing with him. That wasn't the face of someone who had made a mistake. That was the face of someone who didn't care about consequences. I didn't want to hurt you, she whispered, her words sounding empty and hollow. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I laughed bitterly at that, shaking my head in disbelief. You didn't want to hurt me? I repeated incredulously. That's all you've done, Rachel. And tonight it ends. I want you out of this house, gone before the kids come back in the morning. I watched her face crumble as the shock hit her like a physical blow. She clearly hadn't expected me to actually do something about her betrayal. She should have known better. I wasn't about to let her destroy our lives without consequences. Until sunrise, that's what you get, I said firmly. Pack your things and leave. Stay with him for all I care. But don't you dare show your face here again. She opened her mouth to protest, but I was done listening. I turned and walked out, leaving her standing in the ruins of her own making. I stormed down the stairs, each step feeling heavier than the last. The weight of everything was crushing down on me, and my anger was burning hotter with every second. I needed to get out before I completely lost control of my emotions. I grabbed my Tesla key fob from the marble counter, the metal feeling cold against my palm as I headed for the front door. Michael, wait, please! I heard her frantic voice behind me. Can we just talk about this? You don't understand? I spun around to see her stumbling down the stairs, her face a mess of tears and running makeup. Her Prada dress didn't look so perfect now, rumpled and stained with her tears. What's there to talk about? My voice cut through the air like a blade. You cheated. You lied. Now you're paying the price. I don't need to understand anything more. She hesitated at the bottom of the stairs, gripping the banister like it was life support. I made a mistake, she trembled. But it's not just about that. We've been drifting apart for months, Michael. You've been so distant, wrapped up in work. I felt rage exploding inside me at her attempt to shift blame. Don't you dare try to blame this on me. My voice echoed through our home like a thunderclap. You could have talked to me. We could have fixed things together. Instead, you ran off to him. I didn't know how to talk to you anymore, she snapped back, her desperation turning into something darker, accusation filling her voice. You made me feel like a ghost in this house, like I didn't even exist to you anymore. I clenched my jaw so tight it hurt, trying desperately to keep my anger from boiling over. It was impossible now, the dam had broken. So your solution was to sneak around, betray everything we built? That's what you thought would make things better? The words came out in a controlled fury. Something flickered in her eyes. Guilt, maybe, or just another act. Whatever it was, it disappeared as fast as it came, replaced by a cold, defensive stare. I needed to feel something again. Her voice had hardened now. To feel wanted, alive. She paused, swallowing hard. And you stopped caring a long time ago. Her words hung in the air between us, heavy like storm clouds. I couldn't deny there was some truth there. I had been working harder, maybe been more distant, drowning in corporate life. But that didn't excuse what she'd done. Nothing could. Is that supposed to make me feel sorry for you? I barely whispered, but my voice was filled with rage. You think you're the victim here? You think this excuses all the lies? The sneaking around? I gave you everything, Rachel. Everything. And you threw it away like it was nothing. She looked down, unable to meet my eyes. I thought she might apologize, finally own up to what she'd done. Instead, she said the one thing, the thing that broke everything beyond repair. If you'd been a better husband, none of this would have happened. My mind went blank. That was it. The final straw. All the pain, all the betrayal, all the sleepless nights I would face. Everything exploded inside me. "Get out," I said, my voice deadly calm. "Get out of my house before I do something I regret." She froze in place, staring at me like she couldn't believe what she had just heard. I wasn't playing games anymore. I was completely done. "Michael, please," she begged, reaching toward me. I roared with fury this time, my voice explosively loud. I watched her stumble backward, terror filling her eyes. A small part of me enjoyed seeing her scared, but mostly I just wanted her gone. She didn't say anything else. She turned and ran up the marble stairs, disappearing into our bedroom. I heard the door slam shut, followed by the muffled sounds of sobbing. I stood in the middle of the hallway, my whole body shaking with rage, the keys digging into my palms from clenching my fists so tightly. I could still hear her words echoing in my head. If you'd been a better husband, like poison in my veins. Maybe she was right. Maybe I wasn't the perfect partner, but I sure as hell didn't deserve this. I needed to clear my head and get away from the toxic energy filling our house. I walked out the front door, slamming it hard behind me, and headed for my Tesla sitting in the driveway. I didn't have a destination in mind. Anywhere would be better than here. I drove around the Seattle suburbs for what felt like hours. The anger was still burning inside me, refusing to die down. My mind raced with everything that had just happened. Every word she said, every lie she told. I kept seeing her standing there, trying to blame me. The scene replayed over and over until I thought I might lose my mind. Something shifted inside me as I drove. My anger was transforming, becoming colder and sharper. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. She needed to understand exactly what she'd done, and I knew exactly how to make that happen. I pulled my Tesla into an empty Walmart parking lot, streetlights casting long shadows across the asphalt. I took a deep breath and forced myself to think clearly. The kids were safe at Mrs. Anderson's. Rachel had no idea what was coming. She probably thought she could keep living her double life, playing me for a fool. She was wrong. I grabbed my iPhone from the center console and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I needed. My old friend Alex. We hadn't talked in months, but I knew he'd still have my back. Alex was that guy who could find out anything about anyone. He had connections, knew people who could dig up dirt and uncover secrets, everything Rachel thought she had buried deep. The phone rang twice before he answered. "Michael, long time, man. What's up?" "Alex," I kept my voice steady but cold. "I need a favor." There was a brief pause on the other end. "What kind of favor?" "I need to know everything about someone, where they've been, who they've been with, everything they tried to hide." Alex didn't ask questions. He didn't need to. "Give me the details." I started rattling off Rachel's information, her workplace, places she claimed to be, specific dates and times. I knew Alex would handle it. Within days, I would have everything I needed. "Consider it done," Alex said. "I'll get back to you as soon as I have something." I thanked him and ended the call. My heart was still pounding, but for a different reason now. The plan was in motion. I wouldn't stop until I had every truth, no matter how ugly. I sat in my Tesla for a few minutes, staring out at the empty parking lot. The cold night air seeped through the cracked window. The rage was still there, but it had purpose now, direction. I wasn't just sitting back anymore. I wasn't letting her destroy everything we had built. I was going to take back control, one way or another. I started the engine again and drove back home. The streets were almost empty now as I navigated through familiar neighborhoods, the McMansions all looking the same in the darkness. When I pulled into our driveway, the house was dark, except for a faint light coming from the master bedroom window. She was still up, probably plotting her next move, figuring out how to spin this in her favor. I wasn't playing her game anymore. I was rewriting the rules. I entered the house quietly, my anger replaced by cold determination. Each step was calculated and deliberate as I walked up the stairs slowly and reached our bedroom door. I didn't knock. I just pushed the door open. Rachel was sitting on the edge of our king-size bed, her face streaked with tears, mascara completely ruined. eyes red and swollen. She looked up at me, and a flash of hope crossed her face. Like maybe I'd calm down. Maybe I'd forgive her. That expression quickly changed when she saw my eyes and realized nothing had changed. "I'm sleeping in the guest room tonight," I said flatly. I didn't give her a chance to respond. "We'll talk in the morning." I paused for effect, then added, "And Rachel, I wouldn't try contacting him if I were you. You've done enough damage for one night." She didn't say a word as I left, closing the door behind me. I could feel her eyes following me, and I knew her mind was racing with fear. The uncertainty was building. She was starting to realize this wouldn't end how she had planned. I settled into the guest room and lay on the unfamiliar memory foam mattress. A strange sense of calm was washing over me. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. But now I was the one in control, making sure Rachel regretted every choice, every lie, every betrayal. I woke up early the next morning with the tension from the night before still coiled tight in my muscles. The guest room was dead silent, the kind of silence that makes your ears ring. I lay there for a moment, gathering my thoughts, replaying everything from last night. I could hear faint noises coming from the kitchen below. Rachel moving around, probably trying to act normal, like everything was fine. But nothing about this was normal anymore. She was walking on thin ice, and I could almost hear it cracking beneath her feet. I got up and took a quick shower in the guest bathroom, dressing in silence. When I caught my reflection in the mirror, I barely recognized the man staring back at me. There was something different in my eyes now. A hardness that wasn't there before, a coldness that had taken root overnight. This wasn't the time for second guessing. I was done playing the role of the forgiving husband. That man was gone, at least for now. I walked into the kitchen to find Rachel at the marble counter with her back turned to me. She was making breakfast like it was a normal day. The smell of premium Colombian coffee filled the room, but it did nothing to ease the tension. The air was thick enough to cut with a knife. She must have sensed me behind her because she turned around slowly, a fake smile plastered on her face. "Morning," she said, her voice too light, too casual, as if trying to erase everything from last night. "Made your favorite coffee. Want some?" I ignored her question and pulled out a chair at the breakfast table, sitting down. I could see her confidence crack just for a moment before she quickly covered it up. She set the coffee pot on the table anyway. "We need to talk," I said, my voice cutting through her fake pleasantries. She nodded and bit her perfectly glossed lip. "I know. I've been thinking about what you said last night, and I held up my hand, silencing her mid-sentence. "This isn't about what you think you can say to fix this. This is about truth. I'm done with the lies, Rachel." She stared at me, her face going pale. Even her expensive foundation couldn't hide it. "Michael, I cut her off again, my voice firm as steel. "I've already taken steps to find out everything you've been hiding. Before you try spinning some sob story, this is your one chance. Come clean. No more lies. No more games." Her eyes went wide with shock. "What do you mean? What did you do?" "I talked to Alex," I said, watching realization hit her like a car crash in slow motion. She knew exactly what that meant. Alex wasn't someone you called for small stuff. He was the guy who digs deep, uncovers things people want buried, finds secrets nobody's supposed to find. "Michael, please," she stammered, her voice shaking with real fear now. "You don't need to do this. I'll tell you everything. Just give me a chance to explain." I leaned back in my chair and crossed my arms over my chest. "I'm listening." She took a deep breath, her manicured hands shaking as she tried to steady herself against the granite countertop. "It started a few months ago," she began. "I was feeling lost. You were always working late. I felt invisible." She paused, searching for words. "I know it sounds stupid. I started talking to someone online. I just wanted to feel seen again. It wasn't supposed to turn into anything more." I said nothing, just watched her, waiting for the rest of the story. She was playing the victim card again. I wasn't falling for it. "We met a few times," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper now. "Just for coffee at first. Then it became more. I'm not proud of it, Michael. I know I screwed up. I didn't mean for it to get this far." I felt anger rising again but kept it in check, like containing a volcano about to erupt. "And you didn't think to stop?" I asked coldly. "You didn't think about the kids? About me? Before deciding to keep sneaking around?" Tears welled up in her designer contacts. I didn't let them affect me. She'd already cried enough fake tears to fill the Pacific Ocean. I didn't know how to stop, she admitted, her voice cracking like cheap glass. Every time I tried to end it, he'd pull me back in. He made me feel alive. She looked down. But I know it was wrong. I know I betrayed you. Alive? I repeated the word, my voice dripping with disgust. You think that's a good enough reason to destroy everything because you wanted to feel alive? She nodded weakly, her perfectly styled hair falling in her face. I don't expect you to understand, but I'm telling the truth now. There's nothing more. It's over. I ended it. I stared at her, trying to find a trace of the woman I married somewhere in those tear-filled eyes. All I saw was a stranger, someone who had willingly torn apart our family for her own selfish desires. Good, I finally said, my voice cold as a Seattle winter. Because now it's my turn. You're going to pack your things, I told her, my voice leaving no room for argument. You're leaving today. The kids stay with me. You can explain to them yourself why Mommy won't be around for a while. Michael, no! She gasped, stumbling toward me. Her designer heels clicked frantically on the hardwood floor. I stood up quickly and held up my hand to stop her, like a traffic cop halting an accident waiting to happen. This isn't negotiable, Rachel, I said firmly. You made your choices. Now live with them. I'll talk to my lawyer. We'll figure out the details, but you're not staying in this house. She looked like she wanted to argue, to fight back somehow, but she must have seen the resolve in my eyes. Her shoulders slumped in her designer blouse as she finally accepted reality. I'll pack my things, she whispered, turning away from me. She walked out of the kitchen, the sound of suitcase wheels echoing down the hardwood hallway as she prepared to leave our home, my home, forever. I finally let out the breath I'd been holding, like a diver surfacing from deep water. It wasn't over, not yet, but I had taken the first step toward reclaiming my life from the ruins she had left behind. The silence that followed was deafening. The house that had felt too small suddenly felt like an empty museum, echoing with absence. Everything she had taken, her presence, her lies, her deceit, left a void I wasn't prepared for. I stood in the hallway, staring at the front door she had just walked through, feeling a strange mix of emotions. Relief and devastation were fighting inside my chest. I just stood there frozen, letting reality sink in deep. She was gone, really gone. The woman I loved, the woman I had built my entire life with, was no longer part of that life, all because of her choices. Instead of the crushing sadness I had expected to feel, there was only numbness, a cold void where my heart used to be. I walked into the living room, each step feeling heavy, like I was walking through deep water. The untouched coffee she had made was still sitting on the counter, getting cold. I dumped it down the sink and watched the dark liquid swirl away, just like our marriage had. My phone buzzed in my pocket, breaking the heavy silence. It was Mrs. Anderson checking about the kids. I paused before answering, trying to shake off the fog of the morning's events. Hey, Mrs. Anderson, I said, my voice sounding rough and strained from everything that had happened. How are they doing? They're fine, Michael, she replied, her voice warm and reassuring. They've been playing all morning. They don't know anything's wrong, don't worry. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath before speaking again. You don't have to do this alone. Her voice was gentle now. If you need anything at all, just let me know. Thank you, I managed to say, genuinely touched by her kindness. I'll pick them up soon. Take your time, she insisted. The kids are happy here. You should take a moment for yourself. I hung up the phone and collapsed onto the leather couch, staring at the blank 65-inch TV screen. My mind was spinning like a hurricane, thoughts and emotions everywhere, but I couldn't grab onto a single one. Our house was usually filled with noise, kids laughing, toys everywhere, but now it felt like a tomb filled with ghosts of what used to be. It was too much. I needed to get out and clear my head. I grabbed my North Face jacket and Tesla key fob, locked the door behind me, and stepped into the cool Seattle afternoon. I had no destination in mind. I just needed to drive and put some distance between myself and the wreckage of my life. The streets were busy with weekend traffic, families going places, couples walking hand in hand. Everything seemed so normal, so ordinary. It felt like I was watching a movie. I didn't belong in this world anymore. My car seemed to drive itself to Green Lake Park. I hadn't been there in months. I used to bring the kids here when they were younger. Rachel and I had laughed here together before everything went wrong, before she destroyed it all. I parked the Tesla and got out, walking along the familiar paths. The park was alive with activity, kids on the playground, people walking their dogs, the sounds of laughter and life. But I felt disconnected, like a ghost passing through someone else's memories. I found an empty bench near the lake and sat down heavily, staring at the water. The gentle ripples reflected the late sun like a broken mirror of my life. What now? The question kept echoing in my head. What was I supposed to do now that everything I believed in was gone? The anger from the morning and the resolve I had felt earlier were fading away, replaced by a hollow sadness I couldn't shake off. As I sat there watching ducks glide across the water, I realized something. I was alone. Truly alone for the first time in years. There was no one to share my thoughts with, no one to turn to. Rachel was gone, and the life we had built together was nothing but ashes now. I had friends, sure, but this was different. This was a loneliness that comes from ultimate betrayal. The person who was supposed to be my partner, my confidant, had destroyed everything in the worst possible way. But with that realization, something else hit me. Something unexpected. Freedom. It was a cold, bitter kind of freedom, but freedom nonetheless. I was no longer tied down by her lies. I wasn't bound to a relationship that had been rotting from the inside. I could rebuild. I could start over. It wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be quick, but it was possible. I stood up slowly, taking a final look at the lake before turning toward the parking lot where my Tesla waited. I knew the road ahead would be hard. There would be days when the weight would crush me, when it would feel too heavy to bear. But I couldn't let her win. She had taken enough already. My trust, my love, my peace of mind. I wouldn't let her take my future too. I drove back to Mrs. Anderson's to pick up the kids. Each turn of the wheel brought me closer to a conversation I wasn't ready for. The kids were too young to understand what had really happened, but they deserved some explanation. My thoughts were tangled in my head as I tried to figure out what words to use, how to tell them their mother wouldn't be home tonight, maybe ever again. I pulled into the Andersons' driveway and took a moment to steady myself. I could hear laughter through the open windows, a stark contrast to the storm inside me. I forced a smile onto my face, took a deep breath, and knocked on the forest green door. Mrs. Anderson opened it immediately, her warm motherly presence offering a small comfort in the chaos. "Come in, Michael," she said, stepping aside to let me in. "They're in the living room playing with Max." I nodded silently, my smile faltering as I stepped into the warm house. I found the kids on the floor, building a pillow fort while her golden retriever watched them, its tail wagging lazily. Seeing them there, so happy and carefree, made the knot in my stomach tighten. How could I possibly explain what had happened? "Hey, kiddos," I said, trying to keep my voice light as I walked into the warm room. They looked up, both grinning when they saw me. "Dad!" Tyler shouted. My oldest jumped up and ran over, hugging me tight around the waist. "Can we stay here for dinner? Mrs. Anderson said we could have pizza." I forced myself to laugh and ruffled his dark hair. "We'll see, buddy, but first we need to head home. We can talk about dinner on the way, okay?" Emma looked up from the pillow fort, her big brown eyes full of questions. "Where's Mommy?" she asked, her voice innocent and trusting, like she was asking about the weather. I hesitated, my heart twisting at her question. "She's not coming home right now," I said carefully, crouching down to their level. "She had to go away for a little while." Both children frowned, confusion clear on their faces. "Where did she go?" Tyler asked, his grip on my hand tightening. I took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "Mommy needed some time to herself," I said slowly, the weight of the truth crushing me. "She's going to stay somewhere else for a while, but you guys are staying with me, okay? We'll get through this together." Emma's eyes filled with tears as she crawled out from the pillow fort and came over to hug me. "I don't want Mommy to go away," she whispered against my neck, her tiny arms wrapping around me. "I know, sweetheart," I murmured softly, holding her close. "I know it's hard, but we're going to be okay. I promise." Tyler's frown deepened, his young mind trying to process what was happening. "Is it because you and Mommy had a fight?" he asked, fear evident in his voice. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my emotions in check. "Yeah, Tyler, we had a fight," I admitted. "But it doesn't change how much we love you, okay? Your mom and I are just trying to figure things out right now." Mrs. Anderson hovered in the doorway, sympathy filling her eyes as she watched our family crumble. "You're welcome to stay a bit longer if you need more time, Michael," she offered gently. I shook my head. "Thanks, but I think we should go home. I need to talk to them more." She nodded with understanding. I watched her face. She knew more than she was saying, and I was grateful for her silence. I gently untangled myself from Emma's embrace and helped the kids gather their things, books, toys, and jackets scattered around, remnants of their temporary escape from our family drama. The ride home was completely quiet. The weight of our conversation hung in the air like a storm cloud. The kids didn't ask any more questions, and I was thankful for that. I wasn't sure I had any answers left to give them. When we got home, the house felt colder than before. Rachel's absence was glaringly obvious, her usual presence replaced by a void that seemed to swallow everything in its path. I guided the kids inside, trying to keep up the appearance of normalcy even as I felt it slipping through my fingers. "Why don't you guys go play in your rooms for a bit?" I suggested, keeping my voice steady. "I'll make us dinner soon." They nodded silently, their faces still etched with confusion, worry clear in their eyes. They did as I asked, though, disappearing down the hallway to their rooms. I watched them go, and the reality of what I had just done hit me all over again. How do you explain to a child that their mother won't be coming home? How do you make them understand something you barely understand yourself? I leaned against the kitchen counter, closed my eyes, and rubbed my temples slowly. The numbness from earlier was wearing off, replaced by a gnawing sense of loss, of failure. This isn't how things were supposed to be. We were meant to be a family. We were supposed to be happy. Now it was just me and the kids, trying to piece together what was left of our lives. I opened our stainless steel refrigerator and searched for something to distract myself, to focus on anything other than the gaping hole in our lives. I started pulling out ingredients, my hands moving on autopilot as I began preparing a pasta dinner. The routine helped somehow, gave me something to cling to, kept me grounded. While stirring the sauce on our ceramic cooktop, I could hear the kids talking in their rooms. Their voices were soft, uncertain, scared maybe. I knew they were frightened and confused, probably angry too. I knew it was up to me now to hold everything together, to be the anchor they needed in this storm. But as I stood there stirring the pot, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was spiraling out of control. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't fix what was broken. I couldn't take back Rachel's betrayal. I couldn't erase the damage she had done. All I could do was move forward, one step at a time, and hope somehow we'd find our way through this. I heard footsteps behind me, soft padding on the hardwood floor. I turned to see Tyler standing in the doorway, his face serious beyond his years. "Dad," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Is Mommy ever coming back?" I stared at him, my heart breaking at his question. "I don't know, Tyler," I admitted with a thick voice. "But no matter what happens, we're going to be okay. I promise." Tyler nodded slowly, his blue eyes searching mine, looking for reassurance. I tried to give him a smile, tried to be the strong, dependable father he needed. The truth was, I was just as lost as he was.